My name is Ryan, and I thought I knew everything about Emily. We had been together for 4 years, living in a small apartment in Denver, sharing dreams, jokes, and weekend plans that always felt perfect. Emily had this smile that could light up a room, and I had fallen for it the first time I saw her at a mutual friend's party. From the start, I believed she was the one. I believed in forever. But sometimes forever comes with hidden truths that shatter everything you thought you knew. It started with small things that I ignored at first. She started coming home later than usual, telling me that work had been overwhelming or that she needed to meet a friend for coffee. I trusted her. I thought I was being a supportive boyfriend. But then her phone started buzzing more than usual, and I noticed her laughing at messages she didn't want me to see. At first, I shrugged it off. Everyone has secrets, right? But a gut feeling told me something was wrong. One evening, I was waiting for her on the couch after work. I remember she came home humming softly, her hair tied in a messy bun, the kind I loved because it looked effortless. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Hey, how was your day?" I smiled back, but my eyes caught a glimpse of her phone screen glowing faintly in her purse. A notification popped up, and I saw a name that made my stomach twist. Jason. I froze. My heart started racing. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, maybe just a work contact or a friend, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. That night, I pretended to fall asleep while she showered. I heard her phone buzz again. I couldn't resist. I picked it up and read the preview of the messages. My world tilted. They weren't just chatting casually. They were planning trips together, sharing inside jokes, and she called him pet names I had never heard. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. My hands shook, my chest tightened, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. Emily had been hiding someone else in her life while smiling at me every morning, pretending everything was fine. The next day, I tried to act normal. I went to work, smiled at colleagues, pretended to focus on spreadsheets, but my mind kept drifting back to the messages. I needed proof. I needed to understand how deep this went before I confronted her. That night, when she fell asleep next to me, I couldn't touch her or speak. I stared at the ceiling, replaying memories and conversations, trying to pinpoint the first lie, the first moment she started hiding things from me. I felt betrayed, lost, and angry, but I also felt numb. The following week, I started paying closer attention. I checked her social media, her email, and even noticed subtle hints she left behind, small details she thought I wouldn't notice. And I did notice. Everything started to fit together like a dark puzzle. There were photos on her account tagged with Jason, smiling in places she said she had gone alone. She had created a life outside mine, one that I had no part in, and the realization crushed me. I felt like I had been living in a lie, loving someone who had already left emotionally. I confronted myself with a choice: continue pretending, hoping this was temporary, or face the truth, no matter how painful. I chose truth. I needed to see the full picture before making a decision. I started observing her more carefully, her patterns, her texts, her late-night excuses. Everything pointed to the same horrifying reality. Emily was living a double life. She had been cheating on me for months, maybe even a year, and I had been blind, trusting, loving, and completely unaware. That night, I sat on the couch, the laptop open, emails pulled up, photos saved, messages read. Each piece of evidence cut deeper than the last. I realized that this wasn't just a fling or a mistake. She had a secret, ongoing relationship with Jason, a life that paralleled mine, a love she felt elsewhere while pretending to love me. My mind raced, wondering how I could have missed the signs. I felt rage, heartbreak, and disbelief all at once. For hours, I stared at the glowing screen, feeling the world shrink around me. The apartment, once warm and full of love, now felt cold and suffocating. The laughter, the kisses, the plans, all of it tainted by betrayal. I knew that the coming days would change everything. I didn't know whether I would confront her immediately, pack my things and leave, or gather more evidence to understand just how far this went. But one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, I woke up early while Emily was still asleep. I didn't touch her or disturb her. I just sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, trying to figure out what to do next. My heart was heavy, my stomach twisted, and my mind felt like it was moving through fog. I needed to see her clearly. I needed to understand the truth before making any rash decisions. I decided to check her laptop while she was in the shower. She always left it unlocked, claiming she trusted me completely. I opened her email first. At first, it looked normal, but then I found a folder labeled J. Heart. My chest dropped. Inside were hundreds of messages between her and Jason. They had been talking for months. Every message was a punch to the gut. She wrote about missing him, about feeling alive in ways she didn't with me, about plans they were making together. She still called me a good boyfriend, but everything she wrote made it clear that I wasn't her priority anymore. I found photos as well. They were together at restaurants, parks, even small hotels. She was smiling in ways she hadn't smiled with me in months. I saw them holding hands, laughing, taking selfies, sending each other love notes. Every photo confirmed my worst fears. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was an ongoing relationship. She had been living two lives, and I was the only one in the dark. I needed to know who Jason was. A quick social media search confirmed it. I recognized him immediately. He had attended a company event years ago. I had shaken his hand and never suspected he would be the one standing in the shadows of my relationship. The fact that he was so close to her without my knowledge made the betrayal even worse. This wasn't just about Emily. This was a betrayal involving someone I had known, someone I had trusted as part of my world. I spent the entire day in a daze, moving mechanically through my apartment. I didn't answer calls. I didn't eat properly. I barely spoke. Every time I heard her car in the driveway, my stomach twisted. I had to act normal so she wouldn't suspect that I knew. I had to keep observing, keep gathering evidence. She was still smiling, still hugging me, still whispering, "I love you," like nothing was wrong. Each word cut deeper than any slap could have. By the evening, I had made a plan. I wasn't going to confront her immediately. I wasn't going to yell or throw things. I wanted to gather more proof, to see how far this went. I needed to know if she would continue her secret life without fear. That night, I pretended to fall asleep while she showered. I listened as her phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up, but I read the preview. Another message from Jason, planning a weekend together, talking about hotel reservations and romantic dinners. She was still unaware that I knew everything. The next morning, I followed her without her knowing. She said she was going to work, but I parked nearby and watched. She didn't go to the office. She drove across town and met Jason at a coffee shop. They hugged and kissed casually in public, completely unaware that I was watching. I didn't take pictures, I didn't record, I just watched, burning the scene into my memory. The woman I loved was holding someone else in her arms like I didn't exist. After they left together, I went home. The apartment felt emptier than ever. I stared at the framed photos on the wall, at the little gifts we had exchanged over the years, and it all felt like a lie. I realized she had left emotionally months ago, and I had been the only one holding on. I had been loving someone who no longer loved me. That day, she sent me a text with a heart emoji asking how my day was going. I stared at it for a long moment before replying casually, pretending everything was normal. I didn't let her know that I knew the truth. I wanted to control the moment when the betrayal would finally end. She had taken control of the secret, and now I was going to take control of the goodbye. That night she came home smiling, cooking dinner like everything was fine. She told stories about her day, about imaginary meetings and coworkers who didn't exist. I sat across from her, eating pasta, watching her lie without blinking. She had become skilled at this. She had been lying for so long that it came naturally. I realized that she wasn't just cheating, she had mastered deception. When she said that she felt like we were getting emotionally close again and praised me for being supportive, I almost laughed. She was praising a man who already knew the truth. I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air. That night, as she fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, thinking about the first time we met, the first time we kissed, and all the memories we had made. I wondered when I had lost her completely, and whether she had ever loved me as much as I had loved her. The next morning I drove to a quiet park on the edge of the city. I needed clarity. I needed to think without her lies surrounding me. I knew I could confront her in a heated argument, but I didn't want drama. I wanted truth. She had made her choice long ago, and now it was my turn to make mine. I decided that when the ending came, it would be calm, it would be controlled, and it would be final. That evening, Emily told me she had another overnight work trip coming up. She said it was a 2-day marketing conference in another state. I asked simple questions. She answered confidently, providing details she had clearly prepared. I knew this was another lie. I smiled and told her I supported her career. She kissed me, unaware that I already knew where she was really going and with whom. I spent the rest of the night planning. I had all the proof I needed. I had all the understanding I needed. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't crying. I was ready. The next step would be the one that decided everything, and this time I would walk away on my own terms. The morning Emily left for her work trip, I stayed behind in the apartment, pretending to sleep until I knew she had gone. As soon as the door clicked shut behind her, I grabbed my coat and keys and walked to my car. I didn't drive aimlessly. I had a plan. I knew exactly where she was going and who she was meeting. Jason. I had followed their patterns, their hidden schedule, and now I was ready to see the truth unfold in real life. I parked a few blocks from the small boutique hotel she and Jason had booked. I watched from the shadows, my stomach heavy with a mixture of anger and disbelief. They arrived together in a black sedan. Emily looked radiant, laughing like she hadn't a care in the world, while Jason held the door for her and smiled. They embraced, kissed in plain sight, and neither had the slightest clue that someone was observing them. I didn't need photos. I didn't need proof. My eyes had memorized every detail. The betrayal was so vivid it burned into my memory. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, watching them enter the hotel and disappear into the elevator. The lobby clerk's indifferent nod told me nothing. I didn't care about their business. I didn't care about hotel security. All I wanted was to witness the truth and understand the depth of her betrayal. After a while, I drove back home, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The apartment felt suffocating when I returned. Everything seemed wrong. The framed photos, the neatly folded blankets, even the dishes in the sink. By the time evening rolled around, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to wait any longer. I wasn't going to watch her live this double life while pretending nothing had happened. I needed to confront her directly, not with anger, not with shouting, but with calm finality. I wanted her to see that actions have consequences. I wanted her to face reality without a mask, without excuses. When she finally returned, I greeted her casually. She smiled, hugged me, and asked how my day went. I told her it was fine, keeping my voice even. I didn't show the storm raging inside me. I wanted her to feel safe in her ignorance just long enough for me to control the confrontation. We ate dinner. She told me stories about meetings that didn't exist, coworkers who didn't exist, and plans that were all lies. I listened quietly, nodding, observing, taking mental notes. She was so practiced at this deception that I almost admired her skill, if it weren't being used to hurt me. Finally, I set down my fork and looked directly at her. "Emily," I said, my voice steady. She tilted her head, sensing something was off. "We need to talk." She laughed nervously, thinking I was joking. I shook my head. I told her to sit, and she did, her smile fading as she realized I wasn't playing. I explained calmly that I knew everything. Jason, the hotel, the texts, the photos, the lies. She froze. The confident woman I had loved for years now looked small and vulnerable. She tried to speak, but I raised my hand to stop her. I wasn't interested in excuses. I wasn't interested in apologies designed to protect her image. I wanted truth, raw and unfiltered. She swallowed hard, tears forming in her eyes. She admitted everything without hesitation. She tried to explain how she felt disconnected, lonely, and unappreciated. She said Jason made her feel alive in ways she hadn't felt in months. She claimed she hadn't meant to hurt me and that it wasn't about me. It was about her own emotions. I listened silently. Every word felt like another knife twisting deeper, but I held myself together. I realized that her words didn't matter anymore. Her actions had already answered the question. She had chosen someone else. I told her calmly that I understood her feelings, but feelings don't erase actions. Betrayal is a choice, and she had made hers long ago. She began to cry, begging for forgiveness, insisting she could fix things, promising she would cut Jason out and commit fully to us again. I shook my head. I told her that it was too late. The trust was gone. The love we shared couldn't survive the lies she had built over months. I wasn't leaving out of anger. I was leaving because staying meant denying the truth and losing myself in the process. I packed a small suitcase, taking only the essentials. She followed me, pleading, crying, bargaining, promising again. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam doors. I simply remained calm, letting my resolve speak louder than any words she could say. I reminded myself that dignity was worth more than comfort or temporary reconciliation. She had made her choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. Before leaving, I walked slowly through the apartment one last time. The framed photographs on the walls, the little gifts, the memories, they were all reminders of a life that had become a lie. I looked at the place where we had first kissed, the couch where we had laughed on lazy Sundays, and the kitchen where she had cooked meals I once cherished. Everything now felt tainted, hollow, and untrustworthy. I felt a cold finality wash over me. This apartment wasn't ours anymore. I grabbed my suitcase, opened a door, and stepped into the hallway. She asked me where I was going. I said calmly that I needed space. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew staying here meant continuing to live in betrayal. She cried, asking me to stay just a little longer, but I shook my head and left. No slamming doors, no dramatic exits, just the quiet end of a chapter I had once believed would last forever. I walked down the stairs, rolling my suitcase behind me. The night air hit my face, sharp and real. I realized that this was the first time in weeks I could breathe without fear or suspicion. I unlocked my car, placed the suitcase in the back seat, and sat behind the wheel. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I just drove away, leaving behind a life that had already left me emotionally months ago. As I drove through the city streets, the lights blurred past, and I felt an unexpected clarity. The betrayal still stung, but I was no longer paralyzed by it. For the first time in weeks, I felt control over my own life. Emily had chosen her path, I was choosing mine. And this time I would rebuild, stronger, aware, and free from lies. The next days were some of the hardest I had ever lived. Every time Emily walked through the door smiling, every time she kissed me on the cheek, every time she said she loved me, it felt like a knife twisting deeper. But I kept a straight face. I acted normal. I laughed when she laughed. I asked about work. I ate dinner with her. All the while I was watching. I was waiting for her mask to slip on its own. One night, she came home late again. She said she was finishing a presentation with her team. I nodded and told her I was proud of her. Inside, I was thinking about the photos I had seen. I wondered if she had been with Jason instead. She put her purse on the kitchen counter and went to shower. While she was gone, her phone lit up with a notification. This time it did not connect to Bluetooth, but the preview showed a new message. It said she could not wait for the next trip. She was still in the shower. I stared at the phone for a long moment, but I did not touch it. I already had enough proof. I just needed to understand her fully before I walked away. The next morning, I told her I had to go into work early. I left before she did, then parked down the street and watched her leave. She drove to work, but 20 minutes later her car left again. That told me everything. She had not even gotten inside her building. She drove across the city and pulled into a coffee shop. Jason got out of a different car and walked straight to hers. They hugged, they kissed in the parking lot as if they had no reason to hide. They had no idea I was sitting in a car just a few spaces away, watching it all happen in silence. I did not take a picture. I did not record it. I did not need to. What I was seeing burned itself into my memory permanently. I sat there watching the woman I loved hold another man as if I never existed. After a while, they drove away together. I did not follow. I did not need to know the rest. I just drove home. I sat in the apartment on the couch where I had read her emails. I looked around at our home. The framed photos, the gifts, the memories, the plans. It all felt fake now. I realized that I had been living in this apartment while only I was committed to us. She had left emotionally months ago. I was the only one still holding on. Around lunchtime, she texted me asking how my day was going. She sent a heart emoji, like nothing was wrong. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. I told her everything was fine. I told her work was busy. I told her I hoped she was having a good day too. I was playing the part of the lovesick husband who can't wait to see his wife. He said she was backing up with her boyfriend and smashed the truck in the dark parking lot. This time I wanted to decide when the ending would come. She had taken control of the betrayal. I was going to take control of the goodbye. That evening she came home smiling. She kissed me and made dinner. She talked about her day and told stories about work. I sat across from her eating pasta while she described meetings that never happened. She looked into my eyes and lied without blinking. I watched her carefully. I paid attention to every detail. She had become good at this, too good. She had been cheating for so long that lying was now natural for her. While we were eating, she said something that almost made me laugh. She said she felt like we were getting back on track emotionally. She said she loved how supportive I had been lately. She had no idea that she was praising a man who already knew everything. Later that night, she fell asleep next to me. I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I listened to her breathing while thinking about the day we first met, the first time we kissed, the night we moved into this apartment. I wondered when I had lost her. I wondered if she ever actually planned to tell me. I wondered if she would have married me while secretly keeping another man in her heart. The thought made me feel cold inside. I needed to think clearly, so the next morning I took the day off and drove to a small park on the edge of the city. I sat on a bench and thought about everything. I knew I could confront her in a dramatic argument. I knew I could yell, cry, and demand explanations. But none of that would change the truth. She had made her choice long ago. The only choice left was mine. I decided that when I finally ended it, I would do it calmly. I would not make a scene. I would not let her twist the narrative. I wanted her to face the reality of what she had done without drama to hide behind. I wanted my last memory of us to be me walking away with dignity instead of pain. I just needed the perfect moment. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. That evening, Emily told me she had another overnight work trip coming up. She said it would be a 2-day meeting in another city. She packed her bags casually, unaware that I already knew the truth about who she was really seeing and where she was going. I nodded, smiled, and wished her a safe trip. That night, I stayed awake until she was asleep, and then carefully went through her things to make sure I had all the information I needed for the confrontation I planned. By the time she woke the next morning, I had made my final preparations. I wasn't going to leave without saying what I needed to say. I wasn't going to act out of emotion. I wanted control, clarity, and closure. She went about her morning routine, completely unaware that everything was about to change. I watched quietly, memorizing the moment, understanding that this was my final chance to see her one last time as the woman I had loved before betrayal became the defining truth of our story. That morning, I followed Emily to the airport, pretending to go about my day but secretly watching her every move. She moved quickly, carrying her luggage, checking in for a flight she claimed was for work. I knew better. I knew where she was going, who she was meeting, and what she was planning. Jason was waiting for her at her business hotel. Every step she took, every laugh, every smile felt like a dagger in my chest, but I stayed calm. When she disappeared through the gate, I finally allowed myself to breathe. I returned home, went through the apartment one last time, and packed the few things I wanted to keep. Every item I touched reminded me of what had been, of the love I had poured into someone who had already abandoned me emotionally. I placed photographs carefully in a box, silently promising myself that I would keep the memories of us but discard the illusions she had built around me. Later that day she called. Her voice was bright, cheerful, and unaware that I had seen everything. I spoke evenly, responding to her questions about my day, my tone neutral, controlled. I didn't hint at the truth. I didn't let her feel the panic, the heartbreak, or the betrayal I carried inside me. She believed I was still the man who trusted her fully, and that illusion gave me power over the moment when I would finally confront the reality. That evening, she returned. She walked in, laughing, pulling her suitcase behind her, unaware that I had been waiting. I greeted her calmly, told her I had cleaned up a bit while she was gone. She smiled, told me how productive her trip had been, and leaned in for a kiss. I let her, but it was the last time. My mind was clear, my heart resolute, and my decision unwavering. I led her to the living room and asked her to sit. She looked at me puzzled, sensing that something was off. I didn't speak immediately. I let the silence stretch, letting her imagination fill the void. Then I spoke, my voice calm and deliberate. I told her I knew everything. Jason, the trips, the secret messages, the lies. I told her I had seen everything she thought she had hidden. Her expression changed instantly. Shock, then panic, then desperation. She tried to speak, to explain, to apologize, but I raised my hand. I didn't want excuses. I didn't want promises. I wanted truth. I wanted honesty stripped of any protective lies. She cried, admitted everything, and tried to tell me how she felt disconnected and lonely. She claimed it wasn't about me, that Jason made her feel alive in ways I hadn't. I listened, silently, without interruption. Every word felt like poison, but I remained composed. I told her that actions speak louder than words, that betrayal is a choice, and she had made hers. I told her that trust was gone, and that love couldn't survive deceit that ran so deep. She begged, cried, pleaded for forgiveness, promised to end everything with Jason, but I shook my head. I told her it was too late. She had built this secret life, and no words could undo the months of deception. I packed my things and told her I was leaving. I didn't shout, I didn't slam doors. I walked slowly through the apartment one last time, touching only what mattered to me, silently saying goodbye to the life I had believed in. The memories, the photos, the gifts, they were all reminders of love lost to lies. I carried only what I wanted to keep, leaving the rest behind. Before leaving, she tried to stop me. She begged, pleaded, and cried, but I didn't waver. I reminded myself that dignity and self-respect mattered more than clinging to someone who had already chosen another path. I opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and walked down the stairs, suitcase in hand. I felt the cold air hit my face, and for the first time in months, I felt alive, free from suspicion, deceit, and heartbreak. I drove away quietly. No dramatic gestures, no final words, no argument. Just the calm certainty of someone who had seen the truth, accepted it, and chosen themselves. Emily had made her choice, and I had made mine. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. I was no longer bound by lies, by deception, or by a love that had been one-sided for far too long. That night I sat alone in a small hotel room I had booked, watching the city lights flicker outside. I thought about the past, about the woman I had loved, and about the life we had planned. And then I let it go. I realized that betrayal, no matter how deep, couldn't define me. I had the power to rebuild, to trust again, to love again. But first, I had to heal. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to walk. For the first time, I allowed myself to hope. Hope that love could be real, hope that trust could be restored, and hope that even after betrayal, life could still be meaningful. I had survived the heartbreak. I had faced the truth, and I had walked away. And that, more than anything, felt like victory.